Hi Pontus.
Hi.
Thanks for taking the time to chat with me, and thanks for becoming the chairman of the board of Ingrid Cloud.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
You used to be the CTO of Saab, a defense aerospace company that had a revenue of excess of 3 billion euros. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So what was the R&D budget that you guys had?
Yeah, we are around 800 million euros.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
Yeah. Companies like Saab, do they consider using cloud services or SaaS services like Ingrid Cloud?
Yeah, that's a good question. Being in the defense business, we have a history of being very, very secret. And of course, using public services like Ingrid Cloud is today a difficult question for us. We have a tendency trying to lock in everything. But I think looking forward, this will change. I think we saw a big change just a month ago where US Defense Department put an order now on Microsoft to supply cloud services to US Defense using Azure.
Oh, wow.
And so I think we will see a dramatic change in the coming years. I think this goes for a lot of big companies having had this notion of having everything very tight to their IT operation, and now with the huge cost benefits going into cloud services, I think this is the future.
Yeah, I mean, every company can't really have their own supercomputer or supercomputing resources either, right? Or can they?
Yeah, I mean, a company like Saab, of course, we had
with
it.
800 million.
But yeah, but you do it at the high cost, and when you see the huge cost benefits of actually using this as a service instead of actually doing it all by yourself, the change will come. And yeah.
Yeah. So when you think about Ingrid Cloud and the services that we provide to be able to run high fidelity automated flow simulations in the design process and early in the design process, what strategic value would you say that could bring to large enterprise companies?
I think the strategy that you've chosen, going for an area where you're not used to use this kind of tools, is exactly the right one. The building industry and primarily architects, of course, they don't have the experience of using CFD or computational fluid dynamics in their design work. And I think what you've done, making this quite complex technology very easily accessible to people not being, how should I say, accustomed with this kind of technology is quite amazing. And I think that strategy, I think we will eventually come to the big enterprises, but this is a much harder case actually, to convincing all the engineers that has this technology in itself is quite mature.
Yeah.
So many of these big companies already have experts in the field.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think the route that you've taken is absolutely the right one. I think that's also one of the reasons why I thought it was fun to become chairman of the company, because of the very nice packaging you've done with this very, very complex technology.
Yeah. But it's quite a change going from this huge company like Saab to becoming chairman of a startup like Ingrid Cloud. But you do have experience from startups before,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I've been in our investment committee. We have a Saab venture, so I'm still in that investment committee. And now with my new assignments, I'm working for SEB, the bank, and for the Wallenberg Foundation. My primary work is there being an advisor to a lot of, how should I say, to bring out new technology and innovation to the market. And then of course it's very good to actually do some hands-on job also. Yeah. As chairman.
Yeah, and we're super happy to have you on board. So if we go back to sales, when you sell to these enterprise companies and meet these engineers that you used to work with, for excess of 15 years, right? How do you convince them, and what can you do to reduce the time so it doesn't take like 3 years to
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a combination of these big enterprises being accepting using public cloud services. That's number one, and then second, that that it's how should I say, easy to use and adapted to their different applications. So if you're designing cars or if you're designing airplanes, you have to understand the challenges of actually doing that, and the peculiarities of when you do computational in these areas. So you have to have that knowledge of the area.
Yeah.
And I think this will come in the company. We will have to bring in that kind of expertise over time.
Yeah. But there's a lot of boxes to tick or to check in the process, and a lot of people to convince.
Yeah, of course. I think it's important that now with the strategy that we've chosen in the company, now going for these first markets, I think it's very important that we have success in these areas before we jump into new areas, because I think that's one takeaway when looking at many small companies is focusing.
Yeah, exactly.
And
it's one of the classic mistakes, right? Not to focus, not to choose where to.
You run on too many things.
Exactly. Try to be everywhere. One long term, what role do you think that? I mean, we've seen there's a new generation of supercomputers, for example, coming up, exascale generation. What role do you think that high performance computing or supercomputers and faster computations will have for the evolution, or let's say revolution, towards computational design, towards using algorithms to design products?
Yeah, I'm not an expert in the field, but what I see is a merge between, what I say, commercial cloud environments, that what you find at Google or Azure or Amazon, with the HPC environments for classic computing, and this will merge, and this of course will put a strong pressure on enterprises actually going that way, because the cost benefits are huge.
Yeah. And another thing that intrigues me is the way that, I mean, this kind of power that the supercomputer can give, that was exclusive to the large enterprise and the research community.
Now it's available to anyone.
Exactly, and that's very exciting. So I want to thank you for coming here now,
thank you.
And it was a real pleasure to have a chat with you, and hope we can do it again on another topic, perhaps.
Yeah.